Hello Venera. In this screencast, I will give you feedback to last week's evidence paragraph. Okay, in the video presented on TechLead, the ex-technical representative claims that caring about diversity causes problems. Okay, I would say that, sure, I would say rephrase this a little bit to make it more focused. Because it's a kind of a very general statement. Caring about diversity causes problems. He's specifically talking about diversity programs. Some of them are internships and how they tend to be very discriminatory. He says there is a systemic bias. So make this more focused. Because he does care about diversity. He says at the beginning, he also cares about diversity, right? So it's not that caring about diversity causes problems, it's just that some advertisements are very discriminatory, some job opportunities, such as diversity programs, which are internships, right? He articulates that there is a lot of discrimination in the area of diversity. Okay, this is very unclear here. I mean, I know what you're trying to say because I've seen the video, but just looking at the statement in itself, there is a lot of discrimination in the area of diversity. I think what you're trying to say is that there is a lot of discrimination in diversity programs. And of course, diversity programs are very specific things. And some of those that he examines are internships, right? So you can say in internships and other diversity programs, there's a lot of discrimination. There is systemic discrimination, right? But in the area of diversity itself is a very general kind of area. So again, to make it more focused, you can talk about diversity programs or internships. That's what he's focusing on, right? As an example, he exposes the screen of the Oracle internship application. There you go, you're talking about an internship now. That's good. Requirements with race eligibility criteria. Okay, this is very good. Now here, in the actual exam, this would be very good information to include in the identification paragraph. So that's a good start. Remember, you're writing two separate paragraphs. The first one is 75 to 100 words, where you identify the supporting idea and the evidence, and then you're writing a 200 or 150 to 200 word paragraph evaluating it. So the first part so far is good. Actually, you continue with that as well. All of that, this also is identification, and that's good. I mean, he does include the code, he does include that email from Oracle. Okay, so this is what you're going to talk about. Now, I would say it's the easiest way to approach this whole thing is to start with a very clear supporting idea. And his idea was that diversity programs are often very discriminatory because they exclude a lot of groups. By focusing on certain minority groups, they tend to exclude others. That's the supporting idea, and then he's proving it with the civil code by trying to prove that that's illegal, and with the Oracle email by showing directly an example of a diversity program that is discriminatory because it only asks for applicants from certain minority groups, right? Okay, so now obviously in the exam you will have to write a little bit more, right? Because that 75 to 100 words of identification is a separate paragraph, so that will give you more space for a really long, very good evaluation of the three aspects: sufficiency, relevance, and representativeness. So let's see what you're saying here. The evidence is sufficient due to the full explanation of the discrimination prohibition. Again, sufficient for what? If you start with the supporting idea, and the supporting idea is that there is systemic bias all across America in diversity programs, is it sufficient just to show that document, right? The answer is probably not. One isolated example of a document trying to prove that it's legal or illegal, that doesn't mean that all diversity programs all across America are discriminatory, right? He's just citing from the legal code because there is actually, it's actually quite an argument. It's not very clear, and if you actually look at that document, you will see it's not even a legal code. He's actually citing a response to an inquiry about the legal code, and the lawyer, if you trace this, if you Google it, you'll see that the lawyer in that letter is actually responding to the inquiry, saying that he's not committing an answer. He's not saying whether it's legal or not legal, but he lists a number of factors that would determine whether those internships are illegal or not. But he's not conclusively saying that they're illegal. So even that is not sufficient as evidence. Even if you went that deep, if you traced that document, even that is not sufficient. But I think the easier way to write the sufficiency part of the paragraph is simply to say he's making a very large, very general claim about internship programs all over America, and on the evidence, this is simply not enough. We cannot claim just by showing one email and one section of the legal code. That's just not enough. So that could be your comment on sufficiency. Another good comment to make in your paragraph about sufficiency is to say what the author should have included. So you can say the speaker could have included studies, surveys, meta-analysis, concrete data proving, for instance, the percentage of companies or of diversity programs that directly target minorities to the exclusion of other groups. For instance, if a study was made that proves that 90% of diversity programs exclude a lot of groups, then yeah, he would have a point, but he doesn't cite such a study, right? So it's always a good strategy if you find that the evidence is not sufficient, and I think here it clearly isn't. It's always a good strategy in your paragraph to include what he could have included. Okay. Moreover, mentioning different practices of employment and general ethnic characteristics of people makes it relevant to the topic. Sure, I understand what you're saying because I've seen the video. I would just say clarify the wording here. What you're trying to say is that he's clearly showing on the screen. I would just say rephrase this, right? Just to make it very clear. He's clearly showing on the screen an internship, an advertisement for an internship that clearly says we are inviting candidates from such and such minority groups, clearly excluding all other groups. So yeah, that is relevant. I think that's a good point. The source, being also highly credible and authoritative, makes the evidence representative and gives persuasiveness to the author's speech. Okay, fine. I would recommend that you go back to that document. We shared it with you in Google Classroom a while ago. It is very detailed and it discusses all these three aspects. And the one about representativeness was talking not about credibility and authoritativeness, but mostly about how typical it is. So for instance, that Oracle internship. How typical is that of all internships all across America? And I think here the answer is no. It's not very clear that your typical, your average, your normal internship would exclude all these groups that the speaker is claiming are being excluded on a systemic basis, as he calls it. So that one isolated example is just not representative. That's what you can say, right? So again, representative is not about credible and authoritative, but it's about, is that a typical example? The Oracle internship, is it your typical American company asking for recruits to their diversity program for an internship? And the answer is probably no. Most advertisements do not say we need black people, we need Hispanic people, we need those kinds of people. Most of them are just directed at everybody. So I think you will find that if you go back to that document, you can get clarification on all of these three. But I think you at least the structure, you understand what you need to do. I would just say expand on this. Obviously, get it up to at least 150 words. And I think you're on the right track here. Now, obviously, we're writing this without a model. So that's just the first attempt, and that's okay. It's a good start. Hopefully, today's small group tutorial clarified some things for you. There is another model coming up next Monday. Study those models very carefully, both the one from week 11 that I already shared and the one I'm going to share on Monday. You're more than welcome to stop by my office hour to discuss a specific paragraph, and I think you should be in much better shape sometime next week, especially after the mock practice. Okay, I hope this is helpful to you, Venera. Good luck.